Now I could use Sharpie for this. I probably wouldn't use the Pigment Microns for this. They're too thin. But I'll start with the Sharpie. I could even start with a thick edge if I'm really confident in using markers. But if you're a little less confident, start with a thin edge and then work your way around. So also, one of the things that's really cool about your hand is there's an internal compass there. So you can see that my wrist, as I move it, things are making an arc. So move your artwork so that your internal compass of your wrist is relaxed and it works to your fullest potential. Okay? So you'll see me move the artwork around a lot due to this, the fact that I have an internal compass on my hand. So I'm going to go here and I'm tapering it off. The beak, I'll turn it back around here. Just some indication of the beak. Doesn't need to be super long. I'll be a little bit more careful about that. We'll come to a point. And I wanted the head I wanted to flare that out just a little bit because I thought that looked pretty cool. Give it some dimension. Alright, I'll thicken up the lines here as I go. Here's a good line. I'm ready to maybe pull a line for that. Now I gotta be careful about these areas. Make sure they look like they're gonna pull together. And then I did a little something like that. Now again, because I have my internal compass, I'm spinning this artwork around. So spin your artwork around a lot. It really does help. There's that curve, and here's this curve. And I'll turn my paper around to do that curve. I could do it here, but it's just more comfortable for my hand to, the natural, like I said, compass of my hand. I'll tend to turn these around a lot. So it's pretty cool that, and you'll notice that a lot of things you can draw by using arcs, a combination of arcs. Drawing isn't as hard as it may seem. Okay, here's another arc here. And here's another here that fits my internal compass well. Let's see what I've got going on here. On my sketch, it kind of comes around like this and then goes down like that. Okay. And I love the sound tracing paper makes and the feel of it. It just feels like art. The computer kind of feels more like a car, like you're driving something. And you can't drive a design, you have to create it. So getting off the computer and starting something by hand, I mean, it's just such a nice skill to have. It makes your stuff, once you do digitize it, which I will do an exercise on how to digitize these later, but once you do digitize something that's drawn by hand, it still has that hand-drawn quality. It has some personality. The human aspect is still present, and that's what we're attracted to as humans, are things that still we can relate to. So we can relate to hand-generated imagery, and I love the computer, don't get me wrong. It's one of my favorite tools, but it is a tool, as this pen is a tool and this paper is a tool. You have to learn to use how to use multiple tools. And the computer is a great tool, but it's not the only tool. So that's a note about tools and the importance of really good tools too. Sharpies are great, but if you have the time and the little bit of money to invest into better product, better art supplies, it really does open your world to a better set of tools. So, take a little shopping trip, go into the city or suburbs, and see if you can't find some really nice little art supplies to start out your art supply collection. You'll be really glad that you did in the long run. I also have invested in brushes, really good brushes. I'll pay $12 a piece, for a brush, and that sounds like a lot of money. It seemed like a lot of money when I was younger, but you get what you pay for. That's just a general lesson in life. You do get what you pay for. I'm a little too thick over here. But you can see how my symbol's coming along because I am now focusing on creating some variation in my line. I am making the line more weighty where I feel like it needs some contrast. And I had done this in my sketch as well, but you know, I got to make sure I transfer that energy and that information to my drawing, or my symbol, when I'm doing my first draft. Okay, so I think I'm almost finished with this. Let's take a look at it. So here is my first draft, let it dry, of my bird. Let me put a piece of white paper behind it so you can see how this kind of came about. Now, the thing about symbols is your sketch doesn't have to be exactly like, I'm sorry, your first draft does not have to be exactly like your sketch. But here, if you look at the sketch, you can see that it does have similarities. But they're not the same. You know, this is kind of the magic of letter forms and the way they evolved as well. So here is a first draft. Now what I would do is I would capture this image, whether it be scanning it or photographing it. You'll make sure it's clean and easy to understand. It's okay if the pencil lines are still there, light. You know, I don't want to see a lot of dark pencil lines because it really detracts from the piece. So if you have some really something that detracts, oh, here's a problem. Marker doesn't dry very well on tracing paper, so be careful when you're erasing pencil marks from your tracing paper. It kind of skids the marker if it's not dry, so you might have to be a little careful about that. But if the pencil lines are a bit of a distraction in your drafts, go ahead and erase them. And that way when we're communicating with one another, we are understanding what it is the intent was, you know, making sure things are clean, clean and concise. Looks like this needs to be a little thicker. There we go. So it's kind of a work in progress, but at the same time it's clean. I oftentimes show these to clients. So you know, it's not called a rough draft for that very reason. If a client sees something rough, you can lose a lot of trust there between you and the client, or the client loses trust in you. So first drafts should be a very noble attempt at producing something beautiful. So here is my first draft of my bird, and I'll create a first draft for each of the items. So for me, I need to do one for wave, one for bird, and any other pictographs or ideographs. Okay? So there's my demonstration on creating a first draft for my pictograph. Thanks, guys.